Hello and welcome to another episode of Virtual Legality. I'm your host, Richard Hoeg, managing member of the Hoeg Law business law firm of Northville, Michigan. And today we have a bit of a sad, or at very least serious story to go over with you here in Virtual Legality. This is now the second video in a row that has started with scandal at. Today we are talking about a scandal at Ubisoft because one of their crown jewel games, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, scheduled to release in 2020, has had a major shakeup. So let's just dive into it. I've brought up the tweet of Mr. Paul Tassi. He is an author at Forbes, someone that I follow, and this is how this came to my attention on my social media feed. The creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla is now stepping down after infidelity accusations. What's happened from Friday night to today is just wild. So I want to unpack this just a little bit. There have been a number of people that have come into the comments to my videos, have otherwise DM'd me or asked me for further comment on a lot of the things that have been being said in the video game industry over the past few days. Certainly over the course of the weekend, in the last couple of days as well. And it was in this kind of zeitgeist movement that the Scandal at IGN video that we did yesterday kind of arose, that Mitch Dyer came out and said what bad things had happened to him while he was working at IGN. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of people coming out about a lot of outlets, a lot of different firms in the gaming industry and really across a whole bunch of different industries that are talking about things that they experienced and that they didn't like and are exposing what they've had to deal with and what they have gone through over the past any number of years. But those people that asked me to comment on these things, whether it was with respect to IGN, some of these other outlets and accusations leveled at folks like Angry Joe, I responded to and said this: I am in no position here, sitting in front of a microphone with a YouTube channel from afar, to opine as to the veracity of these allegations. To the extent they are true, they seem very bad, and there certainly seems to be levels of toxicity that I wouldn't wish on anybody related to these stories. But I can't adjudge those for myself from here, so I don't comment on them in this space without that ability to judge. I would ask everybody that finds themselves in virtual legality to look at these things with the same kind of critical eye. Absolutely listen to the accusations, listen to the defenses, understand what is being said, but also understand that for a lot of these things, we can't know what the truth of the situation is, at least until one or both parties kind of come to an understanding. In this particular story, however, based on what has happened, and certainly based on the ramifications of the business of Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed, I do think that now is a good time to talk about what has happened with respect to this specific story. So, Mr. Ismail, Ashraf Ismail, is the creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. He was also the creative director of Assassin's Creed, I want to say Black Flag, and certainly Assassin's Creed Origins. And to be candid, that is one of the most important positions that you can have on a video game. Now, different studios can name their various positions differently. So this can vary from studio to studio, but to give you the kind of context here, since we've been talking about it at length over the past week and certainly the past 6, Neil Druckmann is the creative director of The Last of Us and was the creative director of Uncharted 4. That is his position. He is the voice. He is the face of representation for that game. And that face and voice for Assassin's Creed Valhalla will no longer be there as of today. Now, to get into some of the specifics here, we do want to mention this was from a tweet that started last weekend, who said, this person is married. When he starts a relationship with you, know that he's married. This is why he doesn't want to talk to you on the phone or FaceTime or have things sent to your home. His marriage has been confirmed by 3 people. I was with him for a year on and off before finding out. She then shows some text. She brings up some receipts. Some other people kind of verify that. She says that it wasn't not consensual necessarily, but that this person was seeking out partners who are 8 to 18 years younger than them, lying about their position, seeking out fans of theirs. That's its own problem. Other people came out on Twitter, like this additional Twitter user says, I can verify this, brought up their own tweets and messages. I'm not as interested in virtual legality in this space, in diving in to the details here. There certainly seems to be some truthfulness there, but again, I can't properly evaluate that here. However, certainly on the actions that have been taken by Mr. Ismail, it certainly seems to be the case that certain things were done, certain things were said that he now regrets and now is going to really have the entirety of his career, his position, cost him for what has come out here on Twitter. Now, you'll note here on this screen that I've pulled up, he's the creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Origins, and Black Flag, and that I follow him. In fact, as a matter of fact, I think that I've had certain interactions with him. I'm a big fan of the Assassin's Creed series. I'm a big fan of what they have done with it, with the RPGification of the series, with Origins and Odyssey, and what looks to be now with Valhalla. And so I've talked to him about game design, and we've had interactions on Twitter. But it's important to also note just how important this game, Valhalla, is for Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed Origins is one of the games in the Ubisoft library that they have attested to selling more than 10 million copies of. This includes Unity, Origins, the 2 Division games, Far Cry 4, Far Cry 5. Assassin's Creed, as you probably already know, is one of those foundational pillars of Ubisoft. That being said, an action like this, an action like we see today, where Mr. Ismail says, I am stepping down from my beloved project to properly deal with the personal issues in my life. The lives of my family and my own are shattered. I am deeply sorry to everyone hurt in this. Means that the Ubisoft project that has already been delayed, Ubisoft has had no small number of delays for virtually all of their projects over the course of the past couple years. Watch Dogs Legion has moved seemingly out of complete fiscal years to 3 years down the line. Assassin's Creed essentially took a break to go between Odyssey and Valhalla. You have a lot of Ubisoft money that has been aimed specifically at this kind of next 18 months of fiscal progress, including Assassin's Creed Valhalla's release. And so a step like this is not done without consultation between someone like the creative director of the project and the giant multinational corporation that is talking about hundreds of millions of dollars riding on this release. So yes, a situation like this can be one where Mr. Ismail says, this is just too bad. These threads have come out. I've been exposed. I need to go attend to my family. And that might very well be the case, but it was certainly done in consultation with the company and also with the knowledge that it will be very difficult to come back from something like this when you're talking about only a certain amount of months before release for this game. This is not only a difficult decision for him to make, it's a difficult decision for Ubisoft to make, and whether or not it is completely warranted based on what you see in those threads, if you go and you look at those tweets about what he has done, potentially serial infidelity, it is undoubtedly going to have a significant effect on the end product that is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Ubisoft knows that. They're in the business of making money, and they still step back and say, this is important enough that this kind of change needs to happen. Now, it's a little bit unclear whether Mr. Ismail is actually leaving Ubisoft entirely. The next tweet that he says is, there are hundreds of talented, passionate people striving to build an experience for you that do not deserve to be associated with this, presumably his serial infidelity allegations. I wish them all the best. So he's stepping down from his project. Usually when I look at this as something like a messaging type item, I would say, well, that doesn't mean I'm leaving the company. That's what you say when you're leaving the company. I am leaving the company, or I'm stepping away from the company. Stepping down from my beloved project means I'm not going to be creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla any longer, but I think it's going to be worth following whether or not Mr. Ismail stays with Ubisoft. And if he does stay with Ubisoft, whether or not he's actually kind of behind the scenes still creative directing this very, 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 very important project for the Ubisoft company. So I think that's an open question as well. And it's also an open question because of what we know about Valhalla, which is virtually nothing. I've pulled up a PC Gamer article from Valhalla's kind of reveal party in early May, just a little bit more than a month ago. And the release date for this game is presently scheduled as holiday 2020, which, if you're familiar with what's happening in video games this year, you probably recognize as a phrase already associated with the release of the next generation video game consoles. That's when we expect PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. But outside of that, we've basically been shown nothing. We haven't had substantive interviews about what is actually in this game, what it will be like to play it, how RPG it is, how much it goes back to Assassin's Creed before Origins and is maybe a little bit less RPG, what even the scope of the game is. And so Ubisoft is going to be marketing this under the cloud of this particular removal/resignation, and also with a face and a voice that wasn't the creative driver behind the creation of this game. So they're taking some significant risks. And it wouldn't surprise me if something like this, 6 months out, results in a game getting delayed. Ubisoft does not want to delay this game. They have delayed a lot of their major projects for a long time now. They need cash in the door. They need to collect that revenue so that they can proceed with their next set of games to make them revenue. They don't want to delay it. But when you talk about all the situations that have happened in 2020, when you talk about trying to hit a holiday date, which is already right at the tail end of the calendar year, trying to get some of that Christmas money, get some of that next generation money, if you miss that window, that's a significant event. And I couldn't really tell you what's going to happen with a situation like this. It's basically unprecedented. Now, some might say, okay, if the game is releasing in the holiday, they should be roughly done. They should be roughly content complete, right? But as we've talked about, even with respect to The Last of Us recently, there's a lot that is done between now and going gold, actually finishing up the game in and of itself. There are assets to be cleaned up. There are potentially narrative structures to be cleaned up. There are bugs to be squashed, certainly, and maybe you don't need creative necessarily for that, but presumably also you are going to sell Valhalla in the same way that you sold Odyssey, with a year-long set of DLC campaigns that presumably the creative director would at least have some say in, and that creative director is ostensibly now not going to be a part of that discussion. I say that, of course, because we just talked about the fact that it's entirely unclear whether he's actually leaving Ubisoft with a message like that. So that's going to be something that you want to follow. But certainly from a business perspective, this is not a story that should be ignored. I don't know how much coverage it's going to get in the various journalistic outlets in gaming, but this is the kind of thing that does represent a significant change, especially if he is wind up leaving Ubisoft, because this is the kind of thing that happened over the course of only 5 days. As Mr. Tassi at Forbes said, it's amazing what happened since last Friday. And over the course of these 5 days, a major creative force, somebody like J.J. Abrams leaving Star Wars 4 months before it was done, which, might have been better. Who's to say? But something of that ilk in the video game space actually leaving, a person that has made Ubisoft untold amounts of money and would have been held in high esteem at that company, has either been asked or encouraged to leave or has been allowed to leave of their own volition. That is a story worth following. That is a story worth telling. I very much hope this is covered across the gaming outlets today and into the future, because this is the kind of thing that does represent some people, maybe Mr. Ismail, maybe Ubisoft, maybe both, putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to accusations of this type. So that's been Virtual Legality for today. Again, feel free to comment to this video how you feel about situations like this, whether you think things are being handled rightly or wrongly, whether you're concerned about Assassin's Creed Valhalla or not. You can always ask me, but no, just as I said at the top of this video, I am very unlikely to opine or to make a video or to otherwise comment on the dozens of other allegations and discussion items that are out there in respect to the video game industry over the course of the last 5 days, until something like this happens, where there is an actionable item, where somebody does do something like this, where there is a business and potentially legal ramification that we can reflect on in this space. So please do leave your comments, engage with the material, like, share, subscribe, ring bells, do all that good stuff, but I'm only going to be able to talk about what I think I can talk about from afar without knowledge of the facts on the ground. If you saw this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. And if you listened to it as a podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you on the very next episode of Virtual Legality. Virtual Legality is a YouTube video series with audio podcast versions presented as commentary and for education and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you have legal questions about the topics discussed, please consult your own legal counsel.